Hey guys, Jeff Greco with Eli Crozier. This is going to be a continuation of our Rooftop series. Today we're not obviously on top of the roof. The weather was a little bit better for us to be inside. But maybe most importantly, though, is we want to talk to you about guns. Guns in the city, and especially guns from travelers, from people that don't live in New York, especially New York City, and they travel to the city with a gun. And we see this every single week. We get calls for this. People come because they assume that whatever their home state is, it's probably allowed for them to have guns. And when they travel, they come to New York City, they either leave it in the hotel room, or they keep it on their person, or they keep it, in the car that they've rented. And if they haven't been caught yet, it's when they go back through the airport, and we'll talk about that. But Eli, why don't we talk? I know we've talked about these what they call outlier cases. What do you see as the most common type of situation that we get all the time, every single week, from callers that are asking about now these serious felony charges that they've been charged with?
So what you see a lot of times is, like you were saying, someone is traveling from out of state, whether it's North Carolina, Connecticut, or frankly any state for that matter, where the laws in that individual's home state are very different, quite frankly, than the laws here in New York. And people have the mistaken impression that the laws are universal, that the law in one state is the same as the laws in another state. So oftentimes we see people who are lawful gun owners where a firearm is lawfully purchased, there's nothing nefarious going on, and they are traveling either to New York or through New York, and for whatever reason there's an interaction with law enforcement, whether it's a traffic stop, whether it's going up to a police officer, or any other interaction with law enforcement, and lo and behold, they are found in possession of a firearm. Like you were saying, Jeff, most commonly either on their person or in their car or in their hotel or wherever they may be residing. And regardless of whether the gun was lawfully purchased in that individual's home state or unlawfully purchased or obtained, they're still going to be charged in New York with very serious felonies, most commonly criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree, which is a Class C violent felony. And if convicted with no prior felony convictions, you're looking at a minimum of 3.5 years of state prison to a maximum of 15 years of state prison. These are very serious offenses, and the attorney needs to work really hard to make sure that that's not the outcome that the person gets.
You know, that's actually a very good point, and I think it's something that most people can't seem to grasp, to wrap their head around, because think about this. They've never been in trouble in their entire life. They may even be a concealed carry license holder in their home state, or they have legally purchased their firearm, and they come here, and if they are convicted of the C violent, it is not negotiable. It is a mandatory prison term if they get convicted either at trial or through, general plea negotiations. Now, you also generally get charged with the E, like Edward, the E nonviolent, criminal possession of a weapon. But you also have to remember, people go, well, okay, that's a little bit better. And that's true. It is better, except it's still a felony. That means if you're convicted, you are now a convicted felon for the rest of your life. So it's very, very serious charges. It is not something that is probably handled the same way in your home state, where maybe you just get a citation and you maybe pay a fine and it's not even on your criminal record. New York is very serious about gun cases. And yes, there are very important, and I guess there are very important things for you to consider, but maybe most importantly is how this case gets resolved. It is absolutely imperative that you have an attorney that handles gun cases, that is familiar with how these gun cases are prosecuted here in New York City, because the way that we do that here in New York City is very different than, say, upstate New York, where guns are much more common and it is a much more friendly attitude. That's not the case here. New York City cracks down on, firearms of any kind, whether you brought it from your home state legally at first, or you bought it from, a gang member on the side of the street. It doesn't matter. They're going to treat it the same. So these outlier cases, they do have sort of a carve-out exception, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. We have to do very robust mitigation packages to explain who this person is, where they're from, and why are these cases why should they be dismissed or reduced to a misdemeanor or even better, like an infraction? And that's not something that happens overnight.
Exactly. And just to jump in for a moment, when you said before that there's a carve out, there's no legal carve out. There's no carve out in the penal code. When you say carve out, that's discretion from the prosecutor. So number one, it's very important to have an attorney who is knowledgeable and knows how to handle cases like this. But timing is also very important. You need to have an attorney who will contact the DA's office as soon as possible, because the prosecutor, quite frankly, doesn't know that this may be an outlier type case. All the prosecutor knows is that the individual was arrested and charged with a serious gun felony. It's the duty of the defense attorney to bring it to the prosecutor's attention that the individual may have been traveling from out of state, that the firearm was lawfully purchased, that he has a concealed carry permit, that he has a proof of sale or bill of sale. We have to bring this to the prosecutor's attention early on to make sure that the case doesn't get indicted. You want to explain what an indictment means in a case like this?
So this is kind of, it's very, very common in any one of our cases, especially with gun cases. Almost exclusively, the district attorney's office is going to seat an indictment. It's just a formal charging of any criminal defendant. In this case, they will seek a criminal indictment against you, not just for the C violent, but also as well as the E non-violent. And they will also typically indict you with a series of other lesser included charges, which some of them can be misdemeanors. Sometimes it's even infractions as well. But they do that because it's like one-stop shopping. They don't want to go and try to get an indictment later on, and they're butting up against, speedy trial time as well as time restrictions to get indictments in any case. So they're going to get them pretty quickly. That doesn't mean that the case is rolling to a jury trial 2 weeks later, but it does mean that this is being handled very seriously and the case is going forward. So you need to be prepared that your case is very likely going to be indicted.
And you just mentioned timing. Again, to harp on it, timing is very important because it's discretionary what the prosecutor chooses to put on the indictment if the case goes before a grand jury. So that's why it's very important to have an attorney reach out to the prosecutor and let them know that there might be unique circumstances here, because you want the prosecutor to put those lesser included or lower charges on the indictment. Because if you don't do that, the prosecutor has the discretion to just go forward on that top charge, that C violent felony. If the lower charges are not put on there, that really hinders any negotiating down the road, because there are certain limitations on what can be negotiated off of a charge in the indictment. So it's very important that the prosecutor is aware early on that this is an outlier type case. And if we're not able to resolve the case before an indictment, at least if the case is indicted, there are those lesser included charges, like you were mentioning, lower level felonies, misdemeanors, or even violations.
I think the takeaway from this is there's a lot of different ways that, tourists or people that are traveling to New York or through New York can be charged with very serious life-altering felony cases. And if you don't know the ramifications or the repercussions for being charged with a case like that, you need to call us. You need to call somebody who has got decades of experience handling these very cases. And we are in New York City courts every single day of the week. We know how these cases are prosecuted. We know how these cases are resolved. So if you don't understand that and you don't know this already, give us a call. Give us a call and we'll kind of walk you through the whole thing and we'll tell you how we can help you out.